Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is the place where you learn new skill every time you visit. So keep updating yourself by subscribing to the channel. So today we are going to learn constructors in Java and the types of constructor in Java. Alright, so let's see what is a constructor. Now by the definition, a constructor is a special function of a class. Now, it's like any other function, like we have input, process, and output, which we have discussed in the previous video. It's a function like that only. But the speciality is it has the same name as that of a class. The second point of it is, the second speciality is, it does not have any return type. Like the function input and process and output, the return type was void and sometimes double, right? But here, it does not have any return type. And third, it runs on its own. So we need not to call these constructors. Like for other functions, we need to call it using an object. If you remember, we have called obj1.input, obj1.process, obj1.output, but for the constructor, we need not to do that, right? Let's see an example. It is a normal function over here, process, right? So it has a return type, all right? And let's see the example of a constructor. Now over here, you will observe that it does not have anything before this, so no return type. All right, no return type. Now the name of function can be process, input, or output, whatever you want to give it as per the question. But the name of the constructor is going to be the class name only. All right. So if the class is student, the constructor name is going to be student. Inside a function, you can do anything like any calculation, or you can take the input from user, or you can show the output in the output function by printing it. But over here in the constructor, you just assign some space to the string functions and zeros to the numeric values. So the numeric variables are assigned zeros, and the non-numeric variables like strings are assigned space. Okay. Now you remember that when we used to call an object, we used to call an object by this the functions. When we used to call a function using an object, we used to call it like this: obj1.input, obj2.input, right? But for constructor, when we create an object like this over here, when we create an object of a class, this we have discussed in the last video, here only the constructor runs on its own. If you observe, this is the constructor name itself, isn't that? This name is same. So here only the constructor runs automatically. All right. Now, why do we need a constructor, right? A constructor is used to initialize the class variable with some values, which I have just shown you a few minutes before, that for the string variable, it has to assign space, and for the numeric variable, it can assign zeros. Okay. For example, over here, this is a constructor student. Into the string variable, we are assigning space, and into the numeric variable or integer variable, we are assigning 0. We can also assign some fixed values to some variable, like in case of the maximum marks in the previous video, we have seen this example where we needed maximum marks, and the value of the maximum marks should be 500. So we have done that over here. All right. So this can also be done. You can assign a value also. You can assign a 0 and space to the string variables. Now, types of constructor. How many types of constructor we have? We have the first type is default constructor. Now, this constructor does not have any parameter and is used to initialize string variables with space and numeric variables with 0. So parameter means whatever inside the parentheses or the bracket, it's called a parameter. So a default constructor does not have any parameter. Now, what is a parameterized constructor? This constructor is used to pass a parameter which can be used inside a constructor. For now, to take parameters as, I'll just explain you after this copy constructor. Now, what is a copy constructor? This constructor has an object as a parameter. Let's see the example. This is the example of a default constructor. Now, whatever is inside this parenthesis is called a parameter. Means that is the thing we are passing to this function. This constructor is also a function. So the default constructor does not have any parameters. So they have nothing over here. So they are default constructor. Okay. Now, the parameterized constructor, if you observe, has something over here, some value over here. So this value has been passed from outside to it. All right. So that's why it's called parameterized constructor. And the copy constructor, as the definition says, the parameter itself is an object. Now this copy constructor we are going to discuss in the video where I would be discussing passing objects to the function. Okay. So this default and parameterized constructor I'll just do practically. I'll show you practically at the end of this video. Okay. So I think this makes sense now. You have default constructor, the parameterized constructor, and the copy constructor. All right. Now let's understand everything which we have learned so far practically. So let's go to the BlueJ screen. So guys, here is the first screen of the BlueJ interface. And I'll just go to the previous program input output. I'll just open that class by double clicking on that. All right. And here I will try to use the constructor in this program. Now in the previous example, I have already combined it into the total program into the main function. So what I'll do, I'll just quickly convert it back to the input, process, and output function so that I can use constructor. So here I have declared an input. Here I have declared a process. And here quickly I have declared the output. All right, so these are the three functions which I'm going to use. Now I'll quickly shift the commands from the main function over there. So this declaration as a class declaration. So this will, I'll cut from here and it shall go to class. So these are the class variable, which has to be outside any function and inside the class, right? If you remember. Now the input statement, I'll cut it from here. Did here are the input statement, I'll cut from here and I'll paste it into the input method. All right. Now the process, the calculation which has to happen in process, I'll cut it from here and I'll paste it into the process method. Similarly, the output part, I'll cut it from here and paste it into my output method. So here I have defined three methods. I've again converted the program which was completely written in the main method into the three functions. Now in the main method, I'll create an object and call the method so that the program can run. So the class name is input output. So I'll create an object, input and output. Object name will be obj1 equals to new input output. Now remember that this is the constructor name. This is the place where the constructor is going to run. All right, then using this object, I'll call the methods input. I'll call process. I'll call output. Okay, so now what I'll do is I'll declare a constructor, the default constructor. So as we know that the constructor has the same name as that of the class. Now the class name here is input output. So I need to have the name of the constructor to be input output. It does not have a parameter. We know that a default constructor does not have a parameter. Now what it does, it's just going to put space to the string variable and 0 to the numeric variable, which are total marks equals to 0 or 0 and max marks already is 500. So what I can do, I can just shift this assignment from here to here. That will solve my purpose. Okay, I need to declare it here, but put the assignment here. So I'll show you why. Yeah, here it is. So I'll just declare it here only, but I'll put the value inside. Declaration has to be there. Value has to be placed here. So max marks equals to 500. Okay. So this is the default constructor. Now let's see by running it. So I'll just compile my program. Some error. Yes, 2 times I've declared it. So I need to remove one declaration. I pasted it 2 times. Yeah. Now I compile. I'll get to the main screen. And over here in the main screen, I'll run it. So it will ask me now the name of the student. I can give Naman. and the marks. So it gives me the name and the marks, the row marks and the percentage, right? Now, this is the same output as it was giving without constructor. So now you will say, how will I know that the constructor is working or what job the constructor is doing, right? So what we'll do, inside the constructor, we'll put a print statement. So that will assure that if the compiler comes at this part, it's going to print this message. And the message is constructor working, rather default constructor working, I should say, because it's a default constructor. All right, so let me run this. Now this default constructor, as I have discussed, that when this is being called automatically, when you create an object here. So as soon as the object is being created, it will be called. So that message shall be printed. Let's run and see. When I compile it and go to the screen and run it, you'll see that the message default constructor working is coming before taking the name, because while creating the object only this constructor runs, so that message is displayed. Now I'll give the name and the marks. Okay, so I've shown you the use of and the running of the constructor, the default constructor. Now let's go and see the working of the parameterized constructor. Now since the parameterized constructor takes a parameter, so what we'll do is I'll just change this 500, okay, and take it as a parameter. I'll take a variable mm. So this is the maximum marks. Now the user is going to give me maximum marks. Maximum marks in this case is not going to be 500 every time. So whatever maximum marks the user gives, that will be passed from there and goes into the maximum marks, and accordingly the calculation will be done. All right. Now, since this is a parameterized constructor, so while I'm calling this constructor, I have to pass this parameter also, right? So let's see. As we know that when you create an object, the constructor is being called. So this is the place where the constructor is being called. So inside this, in the parameter, I have to give the maximum marks value. I can give 500. It will go as a 500. All right. And then it will do the calculation. Let me compile it. Compile, and I'll go to the screen and run it again. So the name, the marks, and it gives me the percentage. Now what we'll do, we'll try to change the maximum marks. All right. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to create two objects, and with one object I'll take the maximum marks as 500 as it is, and for another object I'll take the maximum marks as 1000. All right. So for another object I need to just copy this statement. This we have done in the previous video of the input output. So I'll change the name of the constructor, and to this constructor or to this object I'm passing 1000. So maximum marks in second case is 1000. Now I need to call the input function two times, one with object 1 for first student, one with object 2 for second student. Similarly, I'll call the process two times, one with object 1 for first student and one with object 2 for second student. Similarly, I'll call the output second times, one with object 1 and one with object 2. Okay guys, let's see how it works. So we have to remember that second time the maximum marks is 1000, so we have to give marks accordingly. So I compiled without syntax error, and I'll go to the main screen and try to run it. Here it is. So default constructor working, the message is coming two times because we have created two objects. So every time for one object, the constructor work, for second object, the constructor work. Now it's asking the name. And this time the marks is out of 500 because it's the first case. So I'll give the marks. Then asking the name again. And this time the marks is out of 1000. So now you see, accordingly, as per the maximum marks, it has calculated the percentages. All right, guys. So I think now this constructor has been clear. You would have understood this well. If you still have any doubt, please put it in the comment box and I'll get back to you. Thank you for your time. Bye bye. Take care. If you are new to the channel, please subscribe it. Also press the bell notification so that you get notification as soon as I release a new video. Share and like the video.